Hello and welcome to another episode of HouseCast. Today we have the privilege, nay, the honor, of having the lead director of Returnal, the guy who invented Returnal in a way, with us. Harry, welcome back.
Hey, Miguel. Thanks for having me back here, man. It's good to see you as always.
Yeah, and of course we are now doing this from a safe distance, but it's always good to remember that we go with the times, and hopefully we'll be able to do this in the studio someday. But for now, I'm happy to at least have a conversation with you once more. Today, I'd like to discuss the sort of origins of Returnal, Gesundheit. But yes, to the origins of Returnal, I would actually want to hear, where did the idea start from? What's the story behind Returnal?
Maybe close to 4 years ago now, when the first seeds were being planted. And we're thinking about projects for the future, and we're having these discussions with Harry Tikanen, Housemarque's co-founder and creative director. And we just went through this process. We were just collecting ideas and just going completely wild, thinking, okay, what would be your absolute dream project if you didn't have to compromise on anything and just dared to dream, you know? And immediately, a couple of really strong elements came up. I mean, yeah, dark sci-fi, that's always been a, really alluring thing for me. Time travel, of course, one of my favorite genres, so to speak, or storytelling styles. Then we thought, okay, maybe an unconventional, maybe female protagonist carrying some kind of trauma, some kind of psychological horror, of course, has always been fascinating. So it wasn't a very crystallized idea that, I just saw in my sleep or something and just said, okay, I want to make this. It was just kind of following this internal rule of cool and this kind of really organic creative process where we're just collecting all of the cool things we would like to really see in a game ourselves. And that's kind of what laid the foundation for Returnal. Back then, the project was codenamed Dark Planet. And of course, just like with any kind of creative vision, you collect all the raw material, you have a general direction, but then over time, all of that gets distilled into a crystallized form of that vision, right? So, yeah, and that has been a continuous process. Um, Clearly, the execution or the implementation of the vision sometimes feeds back into the vision as well. So one informs the other, and we have stumbled upon some pretty cool ideas along the way that we thought, okay, this is awesome. Let's lean more into this, and other things that were originally envisioned that we just couldn't fit into the game for various reasons. It's a very organic process, and I think one thing that I like to do when chasing these kind of ideas is you're chasing the intangible, right? You're chasing some kind of feeling, and it could be like you watch a movie. Like I'm a big fan of psychological horror and mystery, and when I watch movies or play games with that kind of content, there's something that that speaks to me, and sometimes it's really hard to put your finger on it, but it just works on an almost primal level. So then I kind of just try to grab onto that and try to understand, why did this make me feel this way? And then try to chase that feeling. It's like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole in a way, and trying to deconstruct that and find ways to recreate that for other players to enjoy as well.
Absolutely. I think it's, of course, a combination of, trying to let the seeds grow. And then as you're in the process itself, you get these premonitions or just ideas of feelings that you might want to add in some way. And, well, to define the Housemarque Formula a little bit, we have some common denominator factors trickled out to all of our titles. I would say that gameplay is quite central. Lots of effects, huge explosions, We've done a lot of different things, but these are usually the core tenets that we come back to. So now that we're doing a slightly more transformative take on, let's say, a genre that's new to us, of course, you always assume that there's some core elements that we know quite well that will be there, but then you start adding different layers, and the onion kind of grows as you move forward. I think that for me, the addition of narrative, the addition of this atmospheric take on things, that's clearly something that is such a new thing for us that excites us. But you go back and you talk about psychological horror and these feelings. Do you think that this is if games are the medium where you want to explore some new ways of interacting with the audience, or is this something that's always been in games, just not used as much? Or
Yeah, great question. I think in some ways, across all of our games, there's always been this unapologetic element of embracing what makes video games, right? And I think there are certain strengths that are absolutely unique to the medium that you cannot possibly recreate in others, right? So you do have the active component. You are contributing to the story. You are like the central character of the story in many ways. And that's something that you cannot really experience, with other media. So it's like gameplay isn't really what you're doing with your hands. It's what's happening inside the player's head. So it's all the possibilities of things that would happen. It's all the goals that you're seeing kind of like emerge from the structure of the game. It's all of the questions and intrigue that develops from things that go by unanswered. And I think there's a lot of those things that games can really capitalize on, especially as you said, with one example, horror or psychological horror, that kind of you know dark space of the mind in a way that plays with uncertainty and our primal fears. And it's like you can have like this ominous feeling of something is just waiting around the corner, and you can control the pacing. It's like you decide when to go there to confront it. So it's a personal connection to that moment that you cannot get with an orchestrated linear sequence when you watch it in a movie, for example, when somebody else is pulling the strings. So there are definitely some fundamental strengths to the medium that I feel we can capitalize on in that space for sure.
honestly, I think this is such a fascinating topic, and you know, having this opportunity to develop this from scratch and having a different background, with the gameplay first type of attitude, it must feel quite refreshing to be able to add these layers and also innovate on them, because there isn't a long history of Housemarque being able to do these. So there isn't an established background. So now we're sort of reestablishing that. Um, how do you feel about, you mentioned that this is an interactive medium where you can let the audience really uh, have their own way of experiencing things. Does that make it much more difficult to design uh, the systems that then end up surprising or creating awe or wonder, or is it even more straightforward than in movies? Or how do you see that difference?
It's hard to say if it's more or less challenging. I think every game, of course, always comes with its own challenges, because you always have that extra ambition, right, with every game that you're making. If you're just rehashing something that you've done before, it will be easier, but it will be lacking that ambition. And I think with this game, ambition is definitely one of the key words at the heart of the concept. So in some ways, yeah, we do have our fundamental, let's say, values in terms of gameplay, right? So we have the razor sharp controls, we have that really tight and rewarding kind of core feedback loop, lots of explosions, of course, just tapping into the part of the brain that feels enjoyment when it sees things blow up. And that was one kind of like, that was a constant in the equation from the beginning. We knew that we are going to hold on to that trademark Housemarque experience, but just augment and expand it with new dimensions of richness. And of course, the narrative is undeniably one of the biggest new things for us, right? So you could say that even in our previous games, even in Resogun, for example, there's always been a story. There's always been a context for the player's actions, and always some kind of gratifying reward at the end. But there was never this large commitment to telling a story, to exploring that emotional space of the characters in the story. And now, for the first time ever, we do have a narrative team, and we've been able to produce fairly fairly impressive content actually to support the storytelling. And I don't want to go into too many spoilers here, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that it's been exciting to see them materialize, and I'm super excited to see how players will respond to them when the game is out, as this is such a new part of the Housemarque identity, so to speak.
You sold me there. I'm in. I want to play the game now. I want to thank you, Harry. It's been wonderful as always, and it's really something that I look forward to, and hopefully others out there as well. Returnal soon. You'll get your hands on it. Thank you, Harry, and we'll see you guys next time on another episode of HouseCast.
Thanks a lot, Mikael. See you guys.